Voucher went out today. And then we'll need approval of the minutes from October 14th and October 22nd.
So moved.
Second.
Susan moved, Ingrid second. All right, any discussion? All right, I'll call the vote. Susan?
Approved.
John?
Approve.
Ingrid?
Approve.
Jim?
Approve.
And I approve as well. Public comment? I don't think any came in.
Now, John, we have the same protocol as before. Not aware of any, but any we receive, we'll provide to the board and report it out next meeting.
Okay. That takes us to Rhonda, Principal's report.
Good evening, everyone. Our in-person numbers climbed by a couple of people. We had someone switch from virtual to in-person, and we had a kindergartner who started mid-October. We still have 7th and 8th grade in hybrid, but we're looking at a schedule to bring them back on November 3rd. So November 3rd. November 30th, having everybody start back full time. It's a little bit of a scheduling nightmare, but we're getting there. I just want to highlight last fall we started passing, we call it the Rockstar Award, around to different staff members. And at the beginning of the year, Pam Richard was given the Rockstar Award. So included a picture of her in that. And that is really about, and then she chose the next person who received it. And the next person who received it was Greg Dow for all the work that he and his team are doing around the building. So each person gets to give it to the next person. It's staff to staff. So a way that they can recognize each other. We're working furiously. Dempsey's doing a great job with the CRF grants and getting bills churned through that. We've stopped all the ordering. The deadline for the last day to order was last Friday, so that we have plenty of time to get bills paid, because those CRF grants, the deadline is the end of December, but we know that the voucher comes out before the end of December. So to make that work, we stopped ordering when we did. I've asked staff for budget requests and have started putting that together. So Nancy and I will be meeting pretty shortly here to start that. And then I think, Mark, you wanted to meet with Nancy and each principal. So that's kind of our next steps.
I
at the
do.
building level.
John, can I just interject something quickly? Yeah, just, we're going to have a meeting on Monday and with the AOS meeting, and just with the AOS budget and some of the requests, I think, and Rhonda knows this and principals, but just to emphasize, it's going to be really important with some of the things we're trying to prioritize in the coming year, that we keep a closer eye, and we always keep a close eye, but a closer eye on this year's budgets. So just want to make sure the committee's aware of that. But I am encouraging principals to bring forward things in their budgets that show needs, so we can make sure that those things are out there. I don't think not having those things in front of you would be a good decision. So we're pretty much following the process. But the other real concern here is that with COVID, our process looks a lot differently than it has in the past.
Part of the reason why we were able to bring the 7th and 8th graders back into the building on November 30th is that we were able to hire an ed tech that we've had open for quite a while. Tara Peterson has been working in Ellsworth as an ed tech for quite some time. So we're not just picking up somebody with no experience. She's had a lot of experience working with special ed students, so it was a exciting hire. And then the hospital and one of the other school nurses and I did interviews last week with two people for the nursing position here at Pematic, and the hospital did reference checks, and we offered the position to Brittany Burke, and she accepted. She's been a nurse at MDI Hospital, and she'll work with Nurse Barb to transition. But right now we're piecemealing subs together, somebody different every day. Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's Barb, sometimes there are a couple of other ladies that are helping us out. After Thanksgiving, Barb won't be working at COA. They'll be on their winter break, so she'll be able to fill in a lot more in December. And she'll help Brittany. She's already connected with Brittany via email, so they're already working together. The PTO has got a couple of things happening. They're doing a Sensi fundraiser, and there's a link in this. There's a link in the newsletter as well. So that goes from November 9th to December 20th. And then there is a virtual Scholastic Book Fair happening right now through November 29th. And there's also a link to that in the newsletter. With that, you have to sign in and make an account, and then you can get in and shop. Greg and Larry are working on the south side of our building to make that a prettier area for our outdoor classroom space on that side of the building. And in the springtime, they'll work with the K1 and 2 students to replant. There was a flower bed along that side wall, so they're gonna replant that and make that a much nicer space out there, so that all that brush and that wire fence that was all fallen apart and all crumpled up, Scott from the town came over and helped them pull that out. And so that side of the building should start looking much nicer here pretty soon. And then just to highlight what's happening in music, the third graders with their recorders, they get their lesson when they're inside, and then they go outside and spread out. They have to be 14 feet apart to take their masks off and play their recorders, but they're they're pretty amazing, and they're picking it up quick. And then Lynn Bean Ingram shared a picture of her kids working on a writing lesson together. Normally, in a non-COVID time, they would group up right up next to each other, their desks pushed right up next to each other, and they'd share each other's writing, and they give each other feedback. And they can't really do that this year. So they all have their headphones on, and the teachers send the kids off into breakout rooms, and then they're able to give each other feedback that way. So sorry also to get this to you guys so late. Been a little crazy, just a little. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
How did it go for spending the CRF funds? Did you get through most of them? Did you get to spend what you wanted to anyway?
Most of it. The thing that we're struggling on is we wanted to rekey the outside doors, and trying to find somebody who can do that in a timely fashion is not so easy. So that may fall by the wayside, but we're still working on it and still trying to make it happen.
Good. Anybody else have any other questions for Rhonda? Nope. All right, moving on. We got discussion items. Rhonda and I talked today and neither one of us could figure out what options for higher enrollment in 2021 was. Mark, either does.
John, I'm baffled, and I didn't. Rhonda asked me. I checked. I didn't put it on there, but I didn't want to pull it off in case some board member had a question about it. So John
John knows.
might be able to enlighten us. Oh,
Yeah, I know.
I believe it was referring to the expectation that we're going to have more remote kids wanting to come back into the building once we get around the holidays. And Rhonda indicated that might pose a problem and we should discuss it.
It sounds eerily familiar, John, but Rhonda, do you recall that, or do you want to take that one?
I do remember that conversation. When I read this, though, I was thinking about like next school year. So, that didn't even trigger for me.
That's
semester.
my fault. I'm sure Selena picked it up from the way I wrote the minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No worries. The A team is currently revising the first semester's Google form that went out to families so that we can get that information so we'll know for sure, and creating a priority list, like the students who are in the building would have priority over a virtual student moving in, and then same thing with virtual. Those kids that are already virtual will have priority staying in virtual over somebody moving into their classroom. So I think that once we get that information, then we'll be able to, we'll have a better handle on what we need to do. We may need to move, if there's a larger group, they may need to move into the cafeteria. We were hoping to start using the cafeteria once some desks and chairs arrive through our CRF funds, but we may not be able to. We may have to turn that into a classroom. So there are some options, but it definitely, like a month ago, I was a little bit more worried about it than I am now. I think that we've been doing this long enough now that we can figure it out.
Have you had, I know like Julie was talking last week about, she's got an influx of parents calling about the current caseload on the island and people kind of freaking out a little bit. Have we had any parents that are looking to go the other way to pull their kids out?
We have had a couple of families who have chosen to keep their kids home, but not pull them out.
Like certain days, you mean? Just.
Instead of sending them, they're just saying, I'm keeping my child home.
Gotcha.
Are they jumping over to the virtual academy, or they're just not schooling at the moment?
They're just, getting things sent home to them and
Okay.
doing what they can on Dreambox and Lexia, and
Okay.
they're not looking at long-term. I think they're trying to get through Thanksgiving.
Right.
Doing
So
their own version of homeschooling.
does that make it more difficult for the teachers?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
so,
Then they're having to plan for
right.
two
So-
things instead of.
So if we find that there are families that are doing that after the holidays, I wonder whether we should be saying, you need to choose, right? I mean, I don't know how we go about that, but I feel like that's kind of playing both sides of the,
The
game.
problem is we're so close to the end of the semester, and
Right.
that choice, right? That
Yeah,
to have somebody go virtual for 3 or 4 weeks and then jump back in, like, it's hard. That just shifts the difficulty, right, from the school to the virtual academy.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When does the semester end?
The week of the Martin Luther King Day.
Mid-January?
The 22nd, January 22nd.
All right. Do anybody have any other questions about that? Nope. All right. Moving on to budget, preliminary budget for 22.
John, I did a little preemptive strike there, so I'll be quiet, but I think this is just so people know I'm not crazy in these uncertain times. We are going to be bringing some requests in the AOS budget. I know that might raise some eyebrows, but ultimately, I don't see us being able to continue the way we're continuing without those supports for our principals, our staff, and our kids. And so, but my earlier point was that, you know, as if the AOS budget is going to go up, we're going to do everything we can to keep our belts tight at the local level. But so look for things in the areas of operations, testing at the AOS level. You know, certainly we're in a negotiating year and we don't have anything to report on that, but we just have to plan for all those events. And but I do want to open the door to say it's really important Rhonda and other principals bring requests forward. It's not to say that just because the AOS budget may be recommended to go up, that local budgets can't, but I think we just need to be cognizant of that. So, and Rhonda does a good job with her budget, as does Nancy. So thank you.
Yeah, Rhonda.
I just would add that Greg and I have this Pematic Long Range Building Plan document, and I linked it in the principals report so all of you can see. We basically, because of COVID, everything that we had planned for this year got taken out of the budget, so it shifted everything. We just pretty much bumped everything down a year. But the two things that were in the Sealander report that haven't been done are the wing windows and making the front entrance ADA compliant.
John.
I can't remind me, were we addressing the shingles on the gym roof? Is that already being addressed or is that in the forecast?
He's still trying to find somebody that can come and do it.
Are there any, because of COVID, for whatever reason, are there any cost centers from this year's budget that aren't being expended? I imagine not, but
I think we stripped out pretty much everything we could.
What about lunch? Since we're getting federal, do we get any savings there maybe?
Yeah, overall, but I can't, you know, overall the budget will balance, I guess, but we may be negative in the building and maintenance
Lunch
area.
wasn't solvent before, so it's not like. I just remembered I had a Conservation Commission recently. Are we committed? I know that we had some head nodding last time about the front planting plan. Are we committed to, and do we have funds, you know, for maintenance funds to help pay for that? Or is it assumed on our end that they're paying for all of it? Because I don't think that's.
I don't know the answer to that. I think we would be able to contribute a little bit, but they haven't given us any kind of budget for it yet.
They don't have it yet, but they were just wondering if, because they don't have the budget for it either until, you know, I think the tree, you know, campaign has been slim this year, but I just wanted to put that out there.
And we could budget for it for the next fiscal year and maybe do the work over the summer.
Right. Yeah. So,
When's our last payment? Is it November of 2021? Okay, so
No, this fiscal year.
like 2020?
Yeah.
Really?
2021.
This is our last year having that in the budget.
Oh, well,
Mhm.
that's exciting. Okay. So my recommendation would be then that, that we try to utilize the money that would have gone to that debt to do these outstanding projects so that the budget is, is kind of even for next year. And then the following year, I would be attacking the parking lot
Mm. Yep,
out in the front.
yep.
But,
Mhm.
and I think that, that whole front entrance, I know that it was it was a decent sized ticket item, if I recall correctly. And what's odd to me is that you step up to then step down, and what's underneath there, and why is it so expensive, right? Like, has anybody crawled around in that space to understand what's there? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, there, I don't know what's under there. But where the main office is used to be at that height. So,
Right, because you used to step up to get into that office when
mhm,
Mrs. Dunbar was in there.
that's right, when.
It's the Ark of the Covenant's probably down there.
Right.
So I just wonder if it's actually as expensive as projected, because I wonder what's there, right?
Right.
I mean, so,
Yeah, yeah, they had projected 120,000,
right,
and the estimates that we had for the wing windows was 60.
right. Yeah, okay.
I suspect it'll be pricey. Everything has been so pricey lately.
And I think too that it's not just like if you put it down at the front entrance at ground level, there's also gonna be some groundwork that has to happen outside
Sure.
of the water.
A
Weird.
lot of masonry.
It's weird, Ingrid, because I don't know why I know this, but there's two other schools, and one in another district I worked in, that had that type of cavity. But Mount Desert Elementary also has the same situation. I don't know if it's a design thing or what, but yeah, I won't say it's not uncommon, but I've seen that before. It's weird. They can probably, Rhonda, we can probably get somebody in there to take a little camera. They have these cameras, and that could be done relatively inexpensively. I'm sure Greg can find somebody to do
I was
that.
gonna say, we could probably like move the desk or something over here and put a little hole and.
Right, and just because I can imagine if there isn't something underneath there that needs to be moved, right? Maybe they were thinking there was something that had to be moved. I mean, 120,000 is a lot of money
Mhm.
if really all you're doing is getting rid of that raised area and doing some masonry work, right? So, I mean, I think that it would probably behoove us to try to get a little bit more detail on that to see if we can get a better price. I mean, if you were reducing that by half because all you had to do was take that section out and do your walls down along the base, that's a substantial amount of money that can be used towards something else. So
Rhonda, where are the blueprints? I know I have blueprints in the schools at my office. I'll check them all, but do you have blueprints at your building? Because we might be able to answer this.
Yeah, we must.
All right, check into that, and I'll look at my office and have Greg look into the camera thing. We can close the loop on this pretty
Yep.
quickly, I think.
All right. Any other budget stuff right now?
Rhonda, staffing wise, just projections, we know that COVID may continue for some time, so what are you projecting in terms of your numbers for next year, incoming kindergartner? I mean, we want to talk a little bit about pre-K too. We don't want to drop that off, but all those things, are you expecting that, and this, I know this may change, but are you suspecting you may have to increase staff in any capacity? Or that you might be able to get through with your existing numbers, number one? And number two, are you planning on bringing forward a recommendation for pre-K? If so, are you going to try and do that with Tremont? And if not, are you going to still advance it? So I'll stop there. Just a couple of questions I had.
Jandria and I are just starting to have conversations again about that. And so we do plan to bring that forward. We do plan to work together on it. And if COVID is still happening, I probably, I'm having to pull a ed tech to bring the 7th and 8th graders back into the building. So I would at least a half-time teacher or possibly a full-time to spread people out more. But that's as the budget moves on, we'll see what happens with COVID. By the time, maybe we'll know by spring a little bit more.
Thanks, John. I just wanted to get that out there because I think I know those have been items and, it's still, even though we're going to be cognizant of the times, I think those still need to be on the table for discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. The pre-K was kind of hanging out there this year, so hopefully we can get it going next year. Yeah, John?
Just curious, I don't know if the DOE has said anything, but the mandatory vaccine thing kicks in for the next school year, unless they're going to decide to set that aside. And of course, then there's the whole COVID vaccine gets wrapped up into it, but
yeah,
something to keep an eye out for.
Yes.
Because that could affect enrollment one way or another.
Yeah. And my understanding, John, too, when you say mandatory, there's still that opt-out piece, but yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We'll be certainly looking at that.
All right. Any other budget stuff? Anybody? All right. Move on to the action items. Which was the discussion. I lost my agenda. Got the nomination of the special education teacher and then the request to dedicate the bench in honor of Chief Brown.
So, John, if I may, with your permission, I want to support Rhonda's recommendation. So I'll defer to Rhonda for any introductory comments there.
We'd like to nominate Pamela Richard. She's been the long-term sub in that position. She's worked at Pematic as an ed tech in the sunroom for quite a few years. I can't remember now right off the top of my head, but she's the beginning of the year. She was the Rockstar Award. She's doing an amazing job, and she, with very short notice, jumped into that position and is really doing a good job with it. So I'm very pleased to bring her name forward to all of you. Susan?
So I'm happy to make a motion to approve that. I did have a question though. Is she certified? What's her status? Okay, so she's fully ready to go.
John, excuse me, Susan, sorry to interrupt, but if you said you're going to make a motion, John, you should have a second, then you can have the discussion. Sorry.
Second.
Here we go.
Sorry, Susan, I apologize.
Sorry.
Just
That was
trying to be
my
legal.
All right. So now we're in discussion. Does anybody else have any other questions? Rhonda? All right. So we got a motion and a second. So I'll call the roll for a vote. Susan?
Approve.
John? Did you mouth approved? Yeah, okay. Ingrid?
Approve.
Jim?
Approved.
And I approve as well. All right.
Susan, I apologize. I'm no parliamentarian.
Well, I even said, like, I have discussion and then I started it. I'm an idiot.
John, may I just make an introductory comment on the memorial piece? I don't want to steal Rhonda's thunder, but I know that Ingrid had an inquiry. It's interesting that we have a policy on memorializing students, and I understand that. Some districts have policies around staff and others, and so that may be a referral to the policy committee, but I would just like to say this, if I may. I asked Rhonda to reach out to the family first to make sure that the family would be comfortable with this request, and so I'll let Rhonda speak to that. And I'd also like to say that, you know, I think policies like the one on memorializing students and or others are in place for important reasons. It's always hard when we lose somebody in a community, anyone. But Alan Brown, from my experience, certainly was one of the most kind, humble, loving, and considerate individuals. And so, you know, we can say that people care about kids in schools, but he walked his talk. He did. I knew he cared about Pematic. I had the opportunity to work closely with him when we were having the unfortunate period in our country with school shootings, working with him and Jimmy Willis. And he's just a stand-up guy, and he's not a guy that would shed the limelight. But for me, when Rhonda talked about this, just I can see that picture of him sitting with a kid. He deeply cared about that school. And it was not just fluff. It was very, very genuine. And when I think about that picture of Alan sitting there with a kid, you know, it's going to be a way, if the board would consider it and the family's comfortable, to remember Alan in a very positive light. So the work that he did isn't forgotten. So thanks for letting me just share that, John. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Rhonda.
Yeah, and what we're thinking of doing is having a bench built. Mike McEnroe has volunteered to do that for us, and just have it sit out on the little kid playground, because Alan was very supportive and instrumental in getting that playground built, and just super supportive of our school and really a part of our Pematic family. And it would be a bench that, you know, it would be in a place that I know that he really cared about. So that's kind of our plan. And I kind of wanted to, knowing that there was a policy about memorializing students, I kind of waited, and I'm waited to hear what you guys had to say before. If you guys say go ahead, then I'll reach out to the family.
Are you planning a plaque to go with the bench?
We could. I think that's part of our discussion tonight.
Ingrid, do you have a question?
Well, so one, how do we, okay, so presuming we decide we want to do something, how do we do this given this policy? I mean, I realize that this policy is for memorializing deceased students, but we did have a conversation about the bench that's over by the big kid playground, the stone bench that was put there in memory of Les King, who was a teacher for a long time at the school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not against this, but here's what I'm going to throw out. Dave Sheppy, who was the police chief in Southwest Harbor before Alan Brown, passed away recently.
Mm-hmm.
And he too, and I would dare say more so than Alan Brown, was very, very involved with Pematic during his tenure as the police chief. So for me, I feel like if we're honoring Alan Brown in this way, we need to be honoring Dave Sheppy, and maybe it's a bench for both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think we have to be thoughtful about how we approach this. And you know, there's probably other people before Dave and Alan that we could say the same thing about, but because nobody is sitting on this board or involved in this conversation, we don't know who those people are. So So I would be very hesitant to only have this memorializing Alan, particularly because we just lost Dave Sheppy as well. So, that's.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I got Mark and then Susan.
So Ingrid, thanks. No disrespect to Mr. Sheppy or his
Oh, yeah.
family. I didn't know the gentleman, but that means a lot. And so there is no policy that I'm aware of for memorializing community members. But so what the baseline we have is the policy on the students. I think you bring up a good point. And I think lacking policy, the board decides. And at this point, you're at a point where Rhonda's recommending something. You've thrown out a consideration. Maybe give Rhonda an opportunity to think about that a little bit more. I also think that this, not specifically, but we need to do a referral to the policy committee. So if we run into this situation, we're not putting boards or anybody in a place where we don't have a process and we don't treat people equally and fairly and so on. So in this instance, I think it's a concept right now. Rhonda's recommending we can certainly have her do that research and then go from there. And then who knows, maybe the policy committee can turn this around rather quickly as well. This doesn't sound like a difficult piece. There's some benchmarks that we can look at, but I would just offer that as a recommendation. It kind of keeps the process moving forward, but doesn't put the board or anybody in a place where you have to act right now. And the fact that you've been discussing this as a board makes it public. So if anybody has any questions or concerns, they can reach out to Rhonda. That would be my recommendation at this time. Thank you.
Susan?
Well, maybe I have the solution. Instead, and because we ran into a similar problem at the Causeway Club, and the answer that we found, which people seem to really like, is a memorial plaque that you can have name listings on. So maybe on the new fence, so many people walk back and forth between the post office and the school and along the playground, something that can, I don't want to say skirt the policy because we still should vet that. But there are so many people that have meant so much to the school, and as benches rot and landscape designs change, memorials, you're not bound to any one thing, and it's there, and they're easy to get nameplates. It doesn't have to be so impersonal. We can have a ceremony or whatever, with each edition. But I definitely agree with Ingrid that Sheppy should not be overlooked. He was just in years, a much longer term presence at Pematic. And, he's been a part of many, many students over the years. So just a thought. I don't know where it would be or what, but it could check all the boxes, maybe.
That's a decent idea. You call it like the Wall of Honor, or something like that. And I don't think it would have to even be outside. I think you could probably find someplace in the library or in our brand new entryway.
Well, the nice thing about having it outside is that then community members that aren't parents, current parents, or, if you can, I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, and maybe it's the bench that's there for people to sit on, but there's a plaque on the fence behind it that says in memory of people who have, played a significant role in Pematic, or, some verbiage, but that then allows us to add people to it, right? I can imagine that there could be over time all kinds of different people, right? And maybe it's that community members think of people and come to the school board and say, we'd like to have somebody's name added to that because, they were the first person who fundraised the first go around for the playground. I think that
ours requires a donation, so it covers the cost of that placard, literally, and then it goes toward a fund. So, that could certainly be considered.
Yeah.
if we did a stone bench, you could even have people's names, like chiseled into the stone, into the granite. That might be expensive, but just an idea.
That all sounds good to me. I would just second that we get this in front of the policy committee, just because in my time of taking meetings, I think this has come up 3 different times in one way or another with, and what if somebody wants to name the gym after somebody and all of that, and sort of set up a policy so we have a framework to work with.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
We do have a policy on naming of facilities. But yeah, that different road, but I agree with all the comments that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think that brings us to any other business. Is that where we are? Other business? No. Seeing none. Public comment? I don't think we got any news since we've been here. So then we just got future agenda items. So we'll have budget clearly. Maybe the update on the building projects, or update on whatever, if Jimmy Hoffa is buried under the steps there in the front of the building, or
John,
whatever.
Come on, John, we were saying Ark of the Covenant. John, is it okay? Rhonda, don't shoot me, but it doesn't have to be next meeting, but I think it's important the community, the board and the community just get a reconciliation when it's all done on the CRF, what we did or didn't do. That'll be good. Sorry, Rhonda, but doesn't have to be for next month, but I do think, and I'm going to ask all principals to do that. So thank you.
Nancy was actually working on that today, but it was a lot, so we'll have it.
It might be good too. I don't know, because of the health privacy laws, but I don't know if we'll be able to know like what percentage of teachers and staff at Pematic volunteered to get the testing done we're hoping to do in early December.
We'll be able to, John, so I can give you like a rough count. One of our schools of similar size is going to have, it's not Pematic, it's going to have 51 in a cohort. So yeah, we can give you the numbers. We certainly can't give who, but we could give an idea. And actually we could should do a cross section of the AOS so it shows, the percentages and so yes, we can do that.
Yeah, I'm just curious how many people are. Well, if anybody's going to opt out,
So right now we have 361 individuals we've identified for baseline testing. And that means of the 361, these are people that, like, we had 2 rounds to say, tell us if you don't want to do this. And so that's backing out anybody that said, I may not want to do it. There were 361 eligible individuals. Doesn't mean we're going to be testing 361 on an ongoing basis. That's baseline testing. And then from there, we shift into sentinel testing. This is asymptomatic, number 1, and it's employees only, number 2. And what this sentinel testing will do is tell us if there is any evidence of community spread or any evidence coming into our schools. That's the conduit. And again, this process or this program is almost identical to what they were doing this summer with frontline employees in Bar Harbor. It's very similar to what they're doing right now at COA with staff and students. So it's yeah, that's the kind of the 10,000 foot view.
Okay.
You testing all the sewage, Mark?
That I've been dubbed the no, John, not yet, but that now we are looking into that, sir. We are. All kidding aside, that they're doing that at the University of Maine and others, and it is one of the early indicators.
Yeah, there are a lot of colleges that are doing that, and they have prevented definite outbreaks.
Yeah, Burlington, Vermont's just implemented a shutdown of a section of of
Yeah.
the city because of they seen it in the sewage. Something I forgot to ask earlier, Rhonda, sorry. We asked about, families deciding they wanted to step away because of cases going in the community. Have we gotten any concerns from the teachers or staff about being worried about being in the building with the latest rounds of news?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, quite a lot, and quite a lot would just like to know what the plan is.
Yeah.
So I can
Well-
speak to that quickly. I put an email out to parents and staff. The plan is we're doing it. Nobody should be surprised by that. We're in school. We have an SOP. I continue to wonder where that comes from, because I had to put out a couple of communications because it wasn't Pematech, but we were hearing from some board members that some staff in other communities were saying we were going to have extended breaks. Or I don't know where any of that comes from. The people really need to be paying attention to newsletters from the principal, communications from my office, but we have considered, we discussed, and I clarified in my communication, but I'll just say this. Yes, there are very strong advocates on either side of the aisle. There is no wrong answer. Neither side is wrong. But the right thing to do right now is to remain in school for the following reasons. We know it's one of the safest places for kids. We know that. There's hard data on that. We also know that we have no confirmed cases yet. We undoubtedly will, but we don't yet. So for that reason, doing a preemptive strike and in an abundance of caution, whatever term people may want to be, yes, you can make the case to do that. But the very thing that we seek prevent, we may in fact exacerbate if we do. So there are arguments on all sides of the aisle, but I want people to know in these decisions that we make, I'm not doing it in a vacuum. I meet weekly with the nurses, the administrative team, the Down East COVID-19 task force, which includes doctors, physicians, meet with them weekly across the county, meet weekly with superintendents, getting updates regularly from CDC, from the Maine Department of Education, and a whole host of individuals. And so it is really important that the board and the community know that we are not being insensitive to this. This is something that is on our radar every single day. For those folks that do have that anxiety, there's a social emotional piece that we're trying to address as well. So kind of a long-winded way to say that we do have a plan and we're following it. It's our standard operational procedures. That plan is subject to change at any moment. And I think to Rhonda's point, and I tip my cap to that, some people would like to know, why would we wait if we know that we may have to go out remotely, if it's potentially imminent? Every day we can keep kids in schools safely is a good day, I believe, and we should cherish that.
So I'm just going to add that the board chairs, the principals, and Mark's administrative team met on Friday to talk about this and met again on Monday. And we plan on potentially have a meeting again at the end of this week. So we're having these conversations pretty consistently. And there is the economic piece that is part of this conversation too, that, if we proactively, preemptively go to remote, there's a whole host of families that is going to severely impact economically. And so I think we've had thoughtful conversations about all of this. And I will say, Mark, that I was in town today, and a woman whose son is in our after school program goes to Tremont, was talking to someone else in SIPS 2.0. And she said, oh, her son goes to Tremont. A Tremont board member told the father of her child that they were going virtual after Thanksgiving. And I overheard her, and I said to her, because I know her, I said, that is not true. She's like, oh yeah, it is. That's what a Tremont board member told Jeremy. And I'm like, I've been a party to these conversations. It is not true. So, again, Obviously, it's not Heidi, who's been part of the conversations that we've been having, but so, I don't know. I would say maybe it might make sense, Mark, to just reach out to the board member or to your board chairs to say, you might want to let your board know in an email that we've had these conversations. This is what the plan is, because
Yep.
If people have already had their November meetings, you know what I mean? They may not have the same kind of conversation, but
Right. I will follow up, Ingrid, and I'll also make this, if I forget, please, on Monday, we'll review this at the AOS meeting. But yes, I will follow up with that. Thank you. And I'm sorry. The only thing I can say to that is that, I'm not going to say this in a derogatory or negative way, but some people get their information off social media, and that's not always the best source. I think you want factual information, go to the website and go to the newsletters and refer to emails or communications from the superintendent's office. That's the gold standard, not because you're not going to like the information, but it's going to be factual. The websites, but not social media, not, hey, I talked to so-and-so, or a lot of moving parts here. And the information to that changes almost daily in some cases. Thanks.
I was going to add too, that just, it seems like certain teachers, and not at Pematic that I have heard at all, but I had a conversation with a teacher at another school last week, and she was just really set on this schedule, of going remote before. And I said to her, your point, Mark, they're in school now. This is what is the best thing. And that's the thing, is we're all ready to flip the switch when necessary. So, but I think, she just didn't even see my point, really. And I think, again, I don't think it's as necessary for Rhonda, because I don't think that the Pematic teachers are confused here, but that other schools, I would hope that their administration, their principals are really emphasizing. I mean, again, look at the letter from the kids in our school in Rhonda's report. My kids signed off on it, and I said, what? And, but they're just all, I don't really think they're thinking it through.
Well, we also can't, and I know you folks know, but it's important we not operate on fear. We operate on science and medicine, and we follow the protocols. And right now, we are in a green zone. Even though cases may be elevated, we're in a green zone, and we're monitoring this regularly. That's number one. Number two, we don't have any active cases in our school that we're aware of. We probably will, but we don't have any right now. Number three, the data is really clear. Public schools are the safest place that kids and staff can be right now. And that community spread, evidence and data support, it's not coming from schools. It's coming from what people do or don't do out in communities. And if schools, I hope we keep schools open, but we need people's help to do the right things. And I'm still stunned when I go out in places, not in Southwest Harbor, but all over the region, where people may not wear masks. I was like, if these will be the challenges that prevent schools from being open, if people in communities don't do the things, restricting travel, restricting family gatherings, tough stuff that we all have to consider.
Yeah.
I wanted to say thanks to Mark for that letter you put out last week as a parent and a school board member. That got me, my frame of mind, in the right place. And one more question. Yeah, just because I've been asked this, if a family member of a child is quarantining, should that child not go to school?
So we're actually putting out guidance on
Good.
those questions.
That's so confusing about that.
We're getting, I want to, so the short answer here is that we had a conversation this morning with all of our nurses and our principals, and we were all ready to release. I was ready to release a communication this afternoon, but we got one piece that seems there may be a little bit of conflicting information from information we're culling off the website, the state website, and talking to officials at the state. So before we put that out, we're making sure everybody's on the same page. So that's coming, John, and it'll address that piece. I would say if any parent has a question about that, please call your school nurse. They're very up to speed on what you should or shouldn't do. And if always feel comfortable to check in with your local healthcare provider. MDI Hospital has people that you can speak to. There are tons of resources. So I want parents to feel very, very comfortable. And we're in a transitional period with a nurse, but we can facilitate it. And if Rhonda can't get the question answered, we can get it through to our resource, MDI Hospital. It's just really important. I think I'll go back to people being able to have clear and consistent information. So look for a flow chart, John, a very simple one to address those questions here within the next day or two.
And even when we don't have a nurse, when I'm the nurse, Nurse Barb is on, like she's a phone call away. So if someone has a question, I call her and then get back to the family, or she will even call, even though she's not here at Pematic.
All right. Anybody have any other questions? No. All right. Date and time of the next meeting is Wednesday, December 9th at 5 p.m. And I'm assuming we'll be remote again.
I think it's fair to say we will. And just a piece to that real quickly, John, that apologize for the short notice, but the reason we're going back to these remote meetings is there's nothing wrong in our school. There's nothing wrong in our schools. This is a precautionary measure as we begin to see elevated cases. We don't have visitors in our schools. We just felt it was prudent to go in this direction. So, and it's to continue to protect students and staff. That's why we took this approach. And this is going to be all of our boards. But yeah, I can see that, until we have some, we're learning more every day, but until we start to see vaccinations and things of that nature, we're probably going to be in this status for a bit.
All right, that sounds good. I guess that's it. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So
No
moved.
move.
Do we need to vote? All improved.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye. See you Monday.
Thanks, everyone.